Today, I want to talk about spending your money now rather than later. Because I was thinking about it, and it's quite clear that everything, every institution, every system, every financial aspect of our lives, everything is designed and incentivized to make you wait.
Working your entire adult life and retiring after 40 years is absolute bullshit. What I think we should do instead is like mini retirements, where we work really hard for 2 to 4 years and then take like a summer off and then go travel to the Greek islands or some shit like that and then start working again. Because, dude, you're not even going to enjoy it as much when you're 65. But like if I'm 25, 35, I'm gonna have a great time in Mykonos. I'm not gonna have fun there. My arthritis is gonna act up.
Wait until you're old, wait until you're sick, wait until you don't have the energy to do what you want to do anymore. And I think that's kind of a shame. The fact that, yeah, you have to let compounding work, you have to let investing work, you need time for a lot of that. But which is more valuable, your time or your money? And as we know, time is money. We know time has value. And when it runs out, is that the best time to be using all your money?
Somehow depressing to me. Just sitting in these homes from the 70s and they're saying, well, one day we'll go on a trip to Europe. Right now, not right now. We've got a mortgage to pay off. And then they go shopping all the time. Take your Bronco and then they go and take it out for getting some stuff. We need trailers. We need 1 trailer, 2 trailer. Or they buy tires. They love tires and rims. And then they never go anywhere on vacation. They just end up going to the department store and coming back. And then they have kids. And 30 years they got to pay the mortgage. And then they have to do repairs. All the repairs they got to do constantly. They got to repair the Tahoe, they got to feed the Dodge, and they got to put the Explorer in, they got to fix the Explorer.
So that's what I want to focus on today, because everything is designed and incentivized towards waiting and not doing anything, or putting your money in traps that you can't take the money out of. So things like investing, for example, mutual funds and 401ks, you got to wait. And if you try to take out the money early, penalized. Things like health insurance, you got to pay that now. You got to pay that for as long as you live. That's something that's coming out of your pocket constantly. You have to pay for life insurance, and you can't benefit from that. You can't start taking out of that until you're very old. Social Security, which may not be around much longer. I mean, we're what, in trillions of dollars of debt. Nobody cares or votes for politicians that are going to reduce the national debt. And who's going to suffer? Well, the people. We're not going to have Social Security checks coming in for anybody probably after Gen X. That would be very surprising to me. But also, another thing you have to wait for. Another benefit you have to wait for. And then, of course, there's things like mortgages, where it's kind of a trap. It's kind of a financial trap. It's a 30-plus year trap where you're stuck in one place and you got to do not only the mortgage payments, but you got to do maintenance, which is an every year thing, and upgrades, which keeping up with your neighbors and keeping up with styles and trends and your own preferences, and insurance on the home and taxes, property taxes. And the question is, do you own a home if you're paying property taxes? Maybe something for another video. But again, everything in life is designed to make you wait. So sure, compound interest works when you wait, but you'll spend your whole life waiting nonetheless. And I can remember I was in my math class in high school. I had a teacher, and he would show us like graphs of what it looks like if we just keep putting our money away, and over time you get that non-linear curve, and you get that investment, you get that easy way to become a millionaire, as he called it. This was almost 30 years ago. This was the way to become a millionaire, and it's an easy thing to do. Everyone should do it. And I totally agree. That is something that everyone should do. Always invest a little bit over time and put money away. But don't go overboard. And some of the thoughts in this video are gonna get into that. Everything that he was teaching and everything we know about compound investing and compound aspects points towards getting rich slow and playing the waiting game. And you can benefit from everything later in life. But when we say later, that's pretty late. We're talking 60, 65, 70 plus. And the unfortunate thing is, many of you watching, you may not make it that far. And I don't mean to be grim, but that's life. Shit happens. People get sick. And not everyone lasts until they're 70, 75 years old. So the question becomes, would you rather spend your healthy years spending your money? Like, what are all those things that you feel like you would do when you retire? You'd really rather do those things when you're old and sick? Because when you're old and sick, do you really know what that's like? Do you know what it's like to not have energy? Do you know what it's like to just feel crappy every day, to be in pain every day, to be taking chronic medications every day, to constantly be going to the doctor and I don't know what's wrong? You know, all these things that you have to deal with that we kind of expect ourselves, these scenarios that we expect ourselves to get into. Is that something? Is that when you should be spending your money? I mean, and again, you don't really know, you don't know what that's going to be like. It's not going to be good. And the funny thing is, maybe if you wait that long, guess what? Maybe when you get there, you won't even want to spend your money because you'll be in such poor shape. And the funny thing is, we live in a changing world. You have to think about what's going on economically. Is the American dream that was once pretty much standard for everyone, is that still viable? We know that affordability is a nightmare, and if affordability goes down, that's going to drive out the age at which standard retirement happens. We also know that job benefits are going down, fringe benefits, things like that are all going down over time. And also benefits like Social Security, those are going away. What's the best way to think about retirement in the future? I would say that maybe it's best to live your life as if you will not retire. Maybe change your perspective and think, what if every week was a retirement, or every year was a retirement, or parts of every year was a retirement? And what would that do to my health and well-being over time? Instead of just putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And I think people do generally a good job of putting in mini retirements here and there, things like vacations, things like they buy an RV and then they want to go out and do things once a year or twice a year, 3 times a year in the RV. I think that's headed towards the right direction, but most of us will spend money and things will sit, or we'll work too hard and we won't take that time off, or we think we're going to take more vacations and then we don't, and then all of a sudden it's 5 years later and you forgot to have fun. So what I'd really like to do is propose some alternative ideas around how to approach retirement, how to approach life and well-being over time. Because the bottom line about retirement is, in the classical sense, you really can't bank on retirement. What if instead you did some alternative? And I have another video about experiences over things. And so that's a little more aligned up to what you would spend your money on, not when you would spend your money. This video being about when you would spend your money. But what if you saved money and did things that you wanted to do today instead? And you built a life around that construct. So if you think about how things are today in life, generally over time, you have different traits. So you have cost of living, you have how much money you have or your wealth, you have fun, and you have health. In today's construct, in general, our health just declines with time. We think, we manifest our health declining over time. Meanwhile, our wealth kind of goes up and increases non-linearly over time. if we take advantage of that compounding. However, in addition, our cost of living also skyrockets over time. Because guess what? Disease and sickness and surgeries and all those things, guess what? They cost a lot of money. When you age and you need extra care as an elderly person, just Google how much assisted living costs as an old person. Google how much that costs. That's an that's a hockey stick cost of living increase later in life. And then on the fun, when it comes to fun over time, the fun in your life just goes down, just takes a nosedive. That's the standard model today. And that's what most people expect, and that's what most people unfortunately manifest in that process. So here's an alternative that I would say to think about. So when it comes to your health, instead of a nosedive on your health, a steady high level of health, and maybe a little bit of decrease over time, just purely because of aging, but a high steady level of good health. Next, your wealth. So a steady increase or steady level of wealth, but not with the back end increase that you might see if you compounded over 30, 40 years and really just waited out the result of some investment. Basically having a slightly lower level of wealth that stays at a good level and increases towards just enough, instead of some crazy number that you're never going to have the energy to spend or the ability to spend anyway. And then when it comes to cost of living, I think there's a lot of ways that, including taking care of your health and having fun and worrying about well-being, that can keep your costs low. And maybe that's foregoing a mortgage for cheaper rent. You know, maybe it's not buying that $90,000 car and instead going for that $40,000 car. I think there's a lot of ways to reduce costs in life. So if you think about a cost curve in an alternative lifestyle, it's generally a lower cost, but one that does not increase on the back end as you get older. And then of course fun, the fourth variable in this model. In this instance, your fun would basically stay steady at a high level throughout your life and maybe not even drop off at old age. And prioritizing that might be the most important thing of all.
So here are some of the principles that might help you live within this alternative model. First, invest in memories, not in maintenance. Experiences appreciate emotionally, while possessions usually depreciate financially. Every unnecessary possession eventually requires storage, insurance, repairs, cleaning, or replacement. Your future self remembers adventures far longer than purchases. Second, buy time before you buy luxury. Pay to eliminate recurring stress before adding recurring status. A shorter commute can be worth more than a nicer car. Think about that over time. And don't forget, time compounds just like money does. Next, optimize for Tuesday. Vacations are wonderful, but what does an average Tuesday feel like? You can design a life that doesn't require escape. Small daily pleasures beat rare, spectacular ones. Next, stay physically young longer. Build strength before you need it. Invest in mobility, sleep, nutrition, and recovery. Independence is one of the greatest forms of wealth. And the next idea is to make your life lighter every decade. Own fewer things. Reduce recurring bills. Reduce your obligations. Reduce unnecessary complexity. A lighter life is often a happier life. And avoid lifestyle inflation. Every raise doesn't require a bigger house or a newer car. Learn to enjoy increases in freedom rather than increases in consumption. Wealth grows surprisingly fast when expenses stay relatively flat. And build optionality. Money isn't just purchasing power. It's the ability to say yes, but it's also the ability to say no. The freedom to leave a bad job or spend a month with family may be worth more than any other luxury purchase. And next, you can practice micro-retirement. I first read about this when I read the book The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Don't postpone all enjoyment till 65. Take little adventures throughout your life. Spread your memories across decades instead of concentrating them at the end. And then treat aging like compound interest. Small habits become enormous differences after 30 years. Walk daily. Do resistance training for your muscles to keep them healthy. Use sunscreen. Floss every day. Maintain friendships. Maintain your curiosity. The return isn't visible this month. It is enormous, though, 20 years later. And next, pursue vitality, not youth. You don't need to look 25. You want to feel energetic enough to do fun things. The goal isn't looking younger, it's living younger. And also, design for anti-fragility. Don't build a life that collapses when one thing goes wrong. You need to have multiple income streams, multiple hobbies, multiple groups of friends, and multiple purposes. If one disappears, your identity will survive. Next, be rich in recoverability. Ask, if something bad happens, how quickly can I recover? This applies to finances, health, relationships, career, mental health. Recovery speed may matter more than peak performance. And also, build future memories. So one question that I love is, what memory am I buying? Not what object am I buying? Because one creates stories while the other usually becomes clutter. And last, optimize for your average day, not your best day. This is a systems thinking way to live. Most people optimize for retirement, promotion, a dream house, a dream vacation. Instead, optimize for today, tomorrow, next Tuesday, next month. If your average day is enjoyable and your health is consistently good, your expenses are consistently manageable, and your relationships are consistently meaningful, then you don't need to escape your life. You just simply live it. So instead, optimize for a high-quality life trajectory, not a single end state, when you're too sick, too old, and too unhealthy to enjoy life. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep thinking and being, and do not go gentle into that good night.